For most of human history, we believed a terrible lie about ourselves. The lie was this, that by the time you reached adulthood, your brain was finished, fixed, hardwired like a machine, incapable of fundamental change. Your talents were set, your weaknesses were permanent, your anxious tendencies, your limiting beliefs, your emotional reactions, these were simply you, carved in stone. This belief created generations of people who accepted their limitations as destiny. But somewhere in the late 20th century, everything changed. Scientists placed their first living brains under powerful new microscopes called fMRI scanners, and they watched something impossible happen. They watched neurons move. They watched connections grow. They watched the brain, in real time, rebuild itself in response to a single, ordinary thought. The discovery was called neuroplasticity, and it is the single most important revolution in our understanding of the human mind in 4 centuries. Here is what it means for you. Every time you think a thought, every single time you are physically changing the architecture of your own brain. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, literally, biologically, mechanically. The old belief said, your brain shapes your thoughts. The revolutionary truth is that your thoughts shape your brain. The arrow points in both directions, and that changes everything. Let me show you how this actually works. Inside your skull, you have roughly 86 billion neurons. Each one is a tiny messenger. They communicate with each other across microscopic gaps called synapses. When you have a thought, a specific pattern of neurons fires together in sequence, and here is the rule that changes everything. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Every time you repeat a thought, those neurons strengthen their connection. It becomes easier for them to fire together again. The pathway becomes wider, faster, smoother, like a dirt path trampled into a paved road by thousands of footsteps. This is Hebbian plasticity, named after the neuroscientist Donald Hebb, and it explains why your habits, mental and physical, feel so automatic. Your brain has physically carved them into its structure. Now here is the painful part. If you spend your days rehearsing the same worries, the same self-criticisms, the same resentments, you are not just feeling bad, you are building. You are laying neural bricks. You are digging trenches that your thoughts will fall into tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. The pathways you activate often get stronger and easier to access. The ones you rarely use can weaken. Your brain is always listening, always building around the patterns you feed it. This is not mysticism, this is biology. In one study, researchers scanned the brains of children with reading difficulties before and after a 6-month training program. After the training, the volume of white matter, the brain's information superhighways, had physically increased in the regions responsible for language. The repeated cognitive exercise had altered the very structure of their brains. If a child can change their brain with reading practice, imagine what you can change by deliberately choosing where you direct your attention. But let us go deeper, because the story is more beautiful than just strengthening pathways. Your brain is not a static map. It is a living, breathing organism that can grow entirely new neurons through a process called neurogenesis, reorganize entire regions, and even reassign functions from damaged areas to healthy ones. Researchers have even discovered that the brain uses reusable thinking blocks that can be snapped together in new combinations to build entirely new behaviors without having to learn everything from scratch. The brain is flexible because it can reuse thinking components across many different tasks. Baking bread and baking a cake share the same underlying blocks. Now consider meditation. For years, skeptics said meditation was just relaxation, a mental nap. But Harvard researchers scanned the brains of experienced meditators and found something remarkable. The meditators had measurably thicker cortical tissue in regions responsible for attention and sensory processing, and in older meditators, these regions were actually thicker than in younger people, the opposite of normal age-related thinning. The repeated practice of paying attention had physically reshaped their brains. The meditating mind is not resting, it is building, it is sculpting, it is reaching toward a state of what neuroscientists call criticality, a perfect balance between order and chaos where the brain becomes maximally flexible, adaptive, and efficient. You are not stuck with the brain you have today. With repetition and practice, you are constantly reorganizing neural circuits. Here is where the science meets your life in a way that should leave you speechless. Cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the most effective psychological treatments in existence, works by teaching people to do one thing: change how they interpret their own thoughts. This practice is called cognitive reappraisal, the deliberate act of noticing a negative thought and consciously choosing a different interpretation. And here is what the scans show. When patients learn to do this, their brains literally change. Pre-treatment neural activity predicts who will respond to therapy. Post-treatment scans show downregulation of neural responses during emotion regulation. They have rewired their own emotional circuitry. The placebo effect works on the same principle. Patients who believe they are receiving a treatment, even when the pill contains no active ingredients, show measurable brain changes consistent with actual healing. Their expectation creates biology. The philosopher who mapped the depths of the unconscious once wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Modern neuroscience has proven him right. Your brain, left to its own devices, will run the old programs, the anxiety loops, the self-doubt circuits, the fear pathways, simply because they are the most heavily paved roads in your mental landscape. But you are not a passenger in your own skull. You are the civil engineer. You can choose to close the old roads. You can build new ones, not by willpower alone, but by repetition, by showing up day after day and thinking the new thought until it becomes as automatic as breathing. The Stoics understood this 2,000 years before the fMRI machine. Epictetus, the slave who became a philosopher, said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." He was describing cognitive reappraisal without knowing the term. The neuroplastic revolution has simply given us the biological proof that the ancient sages were right all along. A great teacher of presence once said that you are not the voice in your head, you are the one who hears the voice. Neuroscience agrees. The voice is a neural pathway, automatic, conditioned, familiar, the hearing, the awareness that is the part of you that can choose a different thought. That is the part that can build a new road. When you practice paying attention to your thoughts without judgment, what the Buddhists call mindfulness, what the Stoics called prosoke, you are not just relaxing, you are actively strengthening the neural networks responsible for attention and emotional regulation. You are inching your brain closer to that sweet spot of criticality where flexibility and stability meet. This is the deepest implication of neuroplasticity. You have agency over your own brain. Your thoughts are not just passengers waving from the window, they are the drivers, and you are the one behind the wheel. So we arrive at the question that all this science, all this philosophy, all this ancient wisdom has been pointing toward. A question that has no answer except the one you will live into. If every thought you think is physically shaping the architecture of your brain, building roads, thickening cortices, strengthening or weakening synapses, then what kind of building are you constructing with your daily attention? Are you building a prison of repetitive worry, where every anxious thought reinforces the same cell walls? Or are you building a cathedral of possibility, where each deliberate, chosen thought lifts the ceiling higher and widens the doors? Your brain is not asking you for permission. It is already building. It builds while you sleep, replaying and reinforcing the patterns you activated during the day. It builds while you scroll, while you worry, while you rehearse old conversations and anticipate future catastrophes. It builds always, relentlessly, obediently. The only question is whether you will take the pen. You are not stuck with the mind you inherited. You are not bound by the thoughts that visit you. You are the gardener of your own neural garden. You are the architect of your own cortical city. The old belief said your brain is hardwired. The new science says your brain is experience dependent. It becomes whatever you practice. So practice wisely. Direct your attention like a beam of light. Repeat the thoughts you want to become true. And know that every time you do, you are not just thinking, you are building. The city inside you is under construction. The blueprints are in your hands. Make it a masterpiece.